welcome to the Board of Selectmen meeting for Monday, December 7th, 2015. Mr. Clerk, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing. Please be advised that in accordance with the presidential proclamation and as ordered by Massachusetts Governor Charlie Baker, the United States flag and the Commonwealth flag shall be flown at half-staff at all state buildings, sunrise from Thursday, December 3rd, 2015, until sunset, Monday, December 7th, 2015, in honor of the victims of the San Bernardino, California terrorist attack on December 2nd, 2015. Also, 74 years ago today, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, a day which will live in infamy. A moment of silence, please. Thank you very much. All right. On tonight's agenda, 6:30, organized pledge allegiance, read mail. 6:35, we have appointments, Reserve Police Officers and Agricultural Commission. 6:50, we're going to continue the K Property, Grimes Lane, public hearing. 7:05, public input, members' updates. 7:10, public hearing for Point Hospitality LLC, Tim Burkhart, manager of the Courtyard, Boston, Littleton, 102 Constitution Ave. 7:30, a public hearing on tax property classification. 8:15, public hearing on adoption of valuable second-hand item license. Actually, this has been continued. It was on the agenda. We're going to open up the hearing and continue it till January of 2016. 8:20, Town Administrator, Assistant Town Administrator, Investment Policy Amendments, Staffing Vacancy Review Amendment, and accept a $2,500 gift for the Fire Department. At 8:40, other business, annual liquor license renewals, Selectmen meeting scheduled through May of 2016, and minutes approval. Mr. Bergman, mail?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, a few items. First is that we received our annual allotment from the state recently, state matching funds under the Community Preservation Act, and it was great news for Littleton, especially this year, where a year ago we had received $68,000 in state matching funds. This year we received $267,000 in state matching funds, entirely because we had adopted and then fully implemented the so-called Blended Community Preservation Act, where we added to the 1% surcharge that is paid on the property tax, we added to that the equivalent of another 2% in other additional revenues. We brought it up to the maximum of 3% that's allowed under the statute for matching funds. Because we hit that 3% threshold, we actually qualified for another $60,000 just for doing that. So I think that it shows that our efforts, which were a cooperative venture with the Selectmen, the Finance Committee, and the Community Preservation Committee, is literally paid off with a 39% return on our investment for CPA funds. So good for us.
Fantastic.
Absolutely.
Another update, and at this point I can give good news. It has to do with the schedule for the MBTA. It's been a bit of a roller coaster ride, but we're heading up right now. On Friday, the MBTA issued its winter schedule for all of the commuter rail lines, and for the Fitchburg line, they added 2 additional runs, which greatly benefit Littleton and our surrounding neighbors of Acton, Concord, and Lincoln, among others. That on inbound trains, that right now there's sort of a gap between 7:45 and 8:50. That if you're in Littleton and you're going into the city, there's no train between 7:45 and 8:50. But with this new schedule that will take effect next Monday, there will be a train at 8:20, right in the middle. And so that gap is filled. That's an important step forward. For the so-called reverse commute that a lot of our economic development initiatives have been around for commuter rail, right now, the earliest that the train arrives in Littleton from Boston is 8:37 in the morning. As of next Monday, it will be 7:33, so a full hour earlier, and that's great. And it's thanks to our partnership with the administration. We have in writing under our community compact, we have a written commitment from the administration to give us additional service, especially addressing the reverse commute. There was a bit of a hiccup where the T had released with great fanfare a new schedule right before Thanksgiving, would have given us a 7:36 and an 8:06 reverse commute. There were complaints from other communities, not from Littleton, but from other communities, and enough that the MBTA decided to delay those changes. So the plug was pulled on that right before Thanksgiving. The Monday after Thanksgiving, I got a call from Astrid Glynn, the MBTA Rail and Transit Administrator, assuring us that they were going to honor their commitment and that we were going to get an early reverse commute. And as soon as they could arrange it, it would be announced publicly. They announced it the schedule was announced last Friday, and it'll take effect next Monday. So I'm grateful that we've gone this far. The MBTA is still going to have a further public engagement process between now and the spring, where further schedule changes, which we hope will benefit Littleton and this region even more, will be rolled out first in draft form, then public input, and then a decision will be made for the spring. But very pleased with this development that we can share and report tonight.
So Keith, on the public hearings and the public input for MBTA, I know we had talked about a new way of doing it, so
Yeah.
everybody on one particular rail could be heard? Is that?
Yeah, I haven't been able to confirm whether that's going to happen, but I had made this, had the conversation with the MBTA rail manager that it would make sense to organize their public outreach meetings around each rail line, since if there are trade-offs to be made, it's between one end and the other. Doesn't mean that's sort of the group that would be important to all be in the same room at the same time hearing them. So I've offered Littleton as a host site if they would like to have such a public outreach meeting. I've shared that suggestion as well with our legislators, who I hope to hear back from soon. But the trade-offs, if there are things that affect one end of the Fitchburg line, or if they're happening at one end, they do affect the other line, and we all need to be working together to make sure the improvements happen. Speaking of the administration, I did want to mention that there was a rollout today. There was an event that municipal officials were invited to at the State House. The governor announced the filing of a municipal modernization bill, which included a lot of things. We'll share, it's 200 pages long. There's a 4 or 5 page summary document which I'll circulate. The biggest applause from the assembled municipal officials came when the governor announced the proposal to have each local licensing authority determine what their quota for liquor licenses would be. But so we'll see. But there's just a long menu of what the governor called weed whacking, changes to state laws that affect municipal governments that have been in place for a long time. So
Blue laws.
So we'll see. Last item I had put in the packet was to just share with the board and the public that we have now received an independent appraisal on the Cooper Farm property. We haven't scheduled an agenda item yet to go over this and go over the future of Cooper, for which we certainly want to give the public notice. We had commissioned an appraisal from Prospectus LLC, and they came back with an estimate of value of $1,950,000 for those 34 acres. Town council had earlier given us an outline of what are the legal avenues by which the town could acquire the Cooper Farm property, which we've talked about before, a right of first refusal if we ever got one that was valid, negotiating a sale with the purchase with the seller if ever there were not to be an existing agreement between the seller and another buyer. And the third option, which is legally exists, but it's not one we do, is eminent domain. So we can schedule some quality agenda time for future meeting to talk about the Cooper Farm. But
I think after the first of the year would be appropriate, get
Okay.
everybody through the holiday season, and I know there's a lot of folk in town that want to participate.
very good.
All right, moving on. We have some appointments tonight for reserve police officer and part-time dispatchers. Chief?
You can just sit down. Excuse me, we've got something going on. One of those, first off, I'd like to introduce Andrew, please. This is Seppi. I want to make sure I get it right again. Andrew Seppi. He's up for the position of reserve police officer. He has extensive, as you saw from his resume, he has extensive training in emergency medical services. He's a graduate of the 2015 Northeast Regional Police Institute. He resident of Lowell. He did quite well in our interviews. We believe he'd be an asset to the reserve program here, and with that, I introduce Mr. Seppi for the board to question.
All right, Mr. Knox, would you like to start the question?
Matthew, your interest in this position,
Andrew.
Andrew, sorry.
What is it, Matt?
I have it right here. What are your long-term goals?
Well, I one day hope to become a full-time police officer. And so obviously law enforcement is becoming a full-time police officer is a goal of mine and making it a career. It's something that I want to do.
That's all I have right now.
Selectmen do that?
You have a wonderful background. You have a lot of experience in a variety of related areas: emergency medical technician, dispatcher, scheduler, security officer, lots of licenses. Actually, I think I don't have any questions at this time. Looks great.
Mr. Ravello?
To your long-term goal, it's being a full-time policeman, why do you want to train in Littleton now and be a member of the Littleton Reserve?
Well, I want to be part of the team, part of a team, and Littleton was good enough to give me the opportunity to interview with them and subsequently get a call back from them. So, they're taking a risk bringing me on, and I want to, be able to help them as much as I can. So, thank you.
Mr. DeCoste?
See that you've attended the Northeast Regional Police Institute, and it says you're certified as a reserve officer, so that might be actually a question for the chief. There's an additional academy that if Mr.
Seppi.
Seppi, sorry.
Yeah, if he goes full-time, yes, he would have to go to the 6-month full-time academy at that point.
After going through the reserve academy, what was the biggest challenge you faced?
To be honest with you, passing all the tests that they put us through was the biggest challenge. The hands-on aspect of it, I had no problem with. So I'd say just learning all the different laws that they threw at us, and just all the different tests they gave us was the biggest challenge for me.
So there is an academic component to it as well?
Correct.
Right. Good.
So Andrew, I see here you list under volunteer work, a auxiliary police officer for the Lowell Police Department.
Correct.
Tell me a little bit about that. Since 2014, just a year, or?
Yep, it's basically just church detail, directing traffic, no gun, no handcuffs, no power of arrest, anything like that. Just strictly helping out at events, traffic, and that's it.
So you're looking to get really involved in a true auxiliary?
Correct.
Okay. When you're dealing with, currently you're in Lawrence General Hospital?
Lawrence General.
As a EMT. What do your duties consist of there? Full-time?
Full-time, correct. I respond, treat, and transport sick and injured people. Everything from minor medical emergencies to traumatic emergencies, car accidents, shootings, stabbings, things of that nature.
Hopefully that doesn't come around here, right? Don't be expecting that in Littleton.
Right.
All right. That's all I have. Go ahead, Chief, your next candidate?
Want to move right through?
Sure.
Okay. Next candidate is Patrick Hawthorne. That's for the position of on-call dispatcher. Patrick's a resident of Littleton on Baldwin Hill Road. He's currently a full-time emergency 911 dispatcher for the town of Acton, and has enough time to give us if needed. It's great to have another person who's in our community that we can reach out to during emergencies for fill-ins, and also to also give a little bit of relief to just the 5 full-time dispatchers when they're trying to take time off and things of that nature. He has all his, he comes to us fully trained and fully ready to go. He'll go through a training program with us just to get him used to our, there are differences between every department. So he'll go through that and be ready to go fairly shortly. Patrick?
We'll start down this end, Mr. DeCoste.
The only question I have for you was, the chief just answered for me, I believe. The system that's used in Acton, I'm assuming is relatively similar. Is it identical, or?
It's a little different. I mean, we use a payment system. Littleton uses an IMC. What you heard is much better. And that's, I mean, I've been doing this for 8 years, so I'll be able to catch on, which I was told. So it's just learning to change the system. As far as the 911 call answering goes, it's all the same, so.
Pretty comfortable with like technology?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Changes
I
and
mean,
all
yeah,
that kind
no
of stuff,
problem.
so it's not
Nope.
an issue.
The acting police chief is okay with you spending
Yep.
some time with us?
And Deputy Lieutenant as well.
I was going to ask about technology. so-
Yeah, like I said, it's probably take a couple weeks, I hope, if that, and be ready to go to help out.
Mr. Knox?
Same question I asked before. Long-term goals, is it in the police?
So
or-
actually, like I said, I worked in Littleton, Acton for 8 years. I know this past winter's been hard, filling shifts. I live a quarter mile down the road. I can walk to work to help out Littleton. Like I said, dispatchers don't have to stay there for 3 days straight. I consider that, I mean, hopefully helping out, so that's pretty much my main. Just want to help out Littleton. It's a great community. My kids go to school here, so I just want to help out as much as I can.
Thanks.
I walk past your house every night with the dog, so I know exactly where you live. Well, it's good to have a fully trained dispatcher on call, as Chief said. And as Mr. Avella asked, my concern would be your department.
Yep.
Their concerns, and if they're all set, I think it's a great catch for you, Chief.
And we actually talked about that, I mean, our schedules are coming up in February to rearrange it. And like I said, I like to help out midnights and all those hard shifts. So I'll talk to the chief and the deputy, and I can change my schedule in February in Acton to help out Littleton, so.
Sure, fantastic. Appreciate it. Chief?
Last but not least, Zach Taylor from Upland Roads in Littleton. Like to see Zach. He's a born and bred Littleton. He's just starting out in the career of criminal justice. He's currently attending the Reserve Academy. That goes until June, correct?
They just changed the schedule, it's going to end in May.
Okay, so it was going to end in June, now it's in May. So with that, Zach Taylor, and we're hopefully happy to get him on board.
Fantastic. Mr. Knox, any questions?
Same one. Long-term goals, be police officer or move on?
Yes, my long-term goal is to become a police officer, and I think starting as a part-time dispatcher is a great way to work into that career, to learn the radio talk, get comfortable with multitasking. I think it would help my career a lot.
Ms. Hebert?
You graduated from Littleton, so I'm just curious, was there anything during your schooling experience that got you interested into going into this path?
So when I was at Littleton High School, Sergeant Mappinard was the resource officer at the school. I became very close with him, was able to talk to him a lot, and he really sparked my interest in the field.
Awesome. Great to hear it.
Mr. Ravello?
Thinking too much like you. I can rephrase the question that I was going to ask a little bit. Your experiences in the Littleton school system, how'd they prepare you for service, public service?
Public service throughout Littleton High School, I mean, I loved taking history classes, learning about the town. I took a trip with Susan Harvey to the Historical Society, really learned the background of the town. But continuing my education at Plymouth State, that really sparked more about how to work with the public and how to incorporate myself in a role of power or authority.
Thank you.
Mr. DeCoste?
I'll just kind of play right into your hand there. Talk about working with the public, born and bred here, you know a lot of people in town. Do you think you'll be able to kind of separate
Yes.
your duties from
Yes,
friendships
definitely.
and
There's a very nice part of there's an aspect of the town that I really like. It's a small community, everyone knows each other. And throughout my time here, I would like to help preserve that. So,
one more question. What's the highest box jump you can do?
52 inches.
Nice. All right.
I want to ask about the deadlift then. So Zach, it's good to see you come back. You know, it's always good to have local folk who actually know our town and know what we expect. So hopefully this role can, you know, jumpstart, as you said, your path career into law enforcement. So
Thank you.
that's the only question I have.
Thank you.
Thank you. That being said, I'd look for a motion.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 41, subsection 97A, to appoint Andrew D. Seppi of Lowell as a reserve police officer for the Littleton Police Department.
Second.
We'll move the second, and all those in favor?
Aye. Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to appoint Patrick W. Hawthorne and Zachary A. Taylor, both of Littleton, as part-time reserve communications officers for the Littleton Police Department.
Second.
And moving and second, and all those in favor? Aye. Congratulations, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Nice job, kid.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it.
Congratulations.
You got to lay up there.
Thank you.
Good luck. Thanks.
Okay, it's 6:50. We're going to continue the public hearing on the K property. I'm sorry?
Agricultural Commission?
I'm sorry.
6:50. Hearing.
6:50, we got a public hearing. We can continue it. Let's just open it back up and then continue it, okay? I'll take a motion to continue this public hearing.
So move.
And move this, I can't make a motion, you know.
Second.
Moving second, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, so,
You want to back it?
now we'll go back to B, the Agricultural Commission. We have an appointment to the Agricultural Commission. I see Mr. Mitchell out there. Hi, Brad.
How you doing?
Do you know anything about agriculture?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, that's not much.
Is Christine here? Christine's not here?
Steve Nordhaus.
Okay. Mr. Knox, any questions?
No, obviously his resume speaks for itself, and his knowledge of agriculture far surpasses anything that I could even ask about, so I don't have any questions.
I know, we're lucky to have you, and I'm just happy you keep raising your hand for more things, so thank you. for
Yeah, well,
your-
my in-laws just moved in with me, so the cost benefit on more volunteerism has changed a little bit.
Should we have hit mute on that one? You hit the mute button on that one, Brad, you're in trouble now.
We get a lot
This
more
is on
appointments here.
demand, too. Mr. Avella?
I just asked real quick, what do you see are our biggest challenges and how can you help?
I actually think, in the land which you guys are dealing with, but really just better communication and better understanding. I mean, I deal a lot with my current position with a lot of conflicts. Probably our biggest challenge is local regulation, and I haven't seen that in Littleton, and I'd like to keep it that way, but a lot of that just means communicating between the boards and understanding the state exemptions and just where everybody's coming from. So that for agriculture has been one of the biggest challenges statewide. In Littleton, I think it's going to be access to land and actually growing agriculture, which you guys are actively working on now.
Mr. DeCoste.
I think Mr. Mitchell's come before us before, and he's shared his resume, and I think be a good addition.
All right, I have no questions. Having a set of eyes from the Board of Health helps still. That being said, I'd look for a motion.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote.
Excuse me.
Oops, sorry.
I just want everybody to know that it was voted by the Agricultural Commission and recommended Mr. Mitchell for this appointment. I apologize for that.
Absolutely. Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to appoint Brad Mitchell to a term on the Agricultural Commission, a term expiring June 30th, 2018.
Second.
And moving second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Thanks, Brad.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll go back to the public hearing on the K property. Last Wednesday? When was it? Thursday.
It was last week.
Last week, there was a walkthrough with the K's attorney, along with the purchaser, with Mr. Knox and Mr. Hebert and Mr. Bergman?
Yep, and and other staff.
Another staff, okay. Want to give us an update on the tour and what was discussed?
Well, I can start. I'd like to thank Mr. Guthrie for being there, taking us for the walk through the road and trying to look through the land, rather, and explaining some of the ups and downs of that property. Some of it's wet, some of it's very nice. Some of it will probably test out very well. I know he has gracefully said he would donate a certain amount of land to the town, and we did have a chance to talk about the possibility, and it is just a possibility, of having some kind of a small walkway that would go from Grimes Lane out to the property that Littleton actually owns back there. That's about, that's from, Melissa probably has more.
Melissa, you have anything to add?
No, I'd say it was a good walk where we definitely, we talked with Rick. I don't know if Rick's here somewhere, but we talked with Rick and others about what some possibilities might be between us and Mr. Guthrie, and possibilities of walking paths kind of towards the back and not the front if we were, to pass on our right of first refusal. I think we could come to a good meet in the middle agreement.
Okay. Mr. Bergman, do you have anything to add, being a member of the...
Yeah, just a
Field trip.
few things. I did get a tick bite, but that's okay. Every time I go in the woods. A couple of things. First, the hearing that we have at this point is on whether or not to assign the town's right of first refusal to a nonprofit conservation organization. And the sense I was getting from the walkthrough is that we wouldn't have, and Rick he is here, was that that if we did assign it, that there actually wouldn't be any interest, there wouldn't be any ability of an organization to then take the assignment and close by December 29th.
That's correct.
Which is, and part of that is that there are other properties of a higher priority in town that funds locally might want to be used for. So if we're not going to be in a position, we're certainly not holding a town meeting by the 29th of December to acquire the property. And we're also aware from prior discussions that the seller is not interested. Is Joe here? There's Joe Hawkins in the back. The seller was not interested in delaying the sale of the property and was hoping to have a prompt closure And so we wouldn't have the time to bring it to a town meeting in May. So if we're in the position where it doesn't look like either we or a nonprofit organization would be acquiring the property, then we wanted to make sure we were having the discussion to explore receiving at least part of it as a gift, as Mr. Guthrie has offered. One of the issues that had come up during the site walk, and I believe it had come up at a site walk that the planning board had of the Durkee property the week before, is that that the Durkee and K properties are adjacent to one another, and how one gets developed or not could affect the other. And it seemed like it would be useful before the Board of Selectmen signed an agreement. We've got a draft host community agreement with Mr. Guthrie that we've talked about before, that before the Board of Selectmen entered into that agreement, it would be well for the Board of Selectmen to meet jointly with the planning board to discuss this neighborhood. And there are parts of the properties that fit in. There are, and indeed how the Durkee property might get developed, I would think would have a material bearing on which portions of the K property we would want to see preserved. So the suggestion was made to have the planning board and the selectmen meet jointly. The planning board meets this Thursday and would be able to meet with this board at 7:15. We're also trying to have some conversations between now and then among the chairs of the planning board and the selectmen. We've been trying to, Rich Crowley is trying to arrange that today. So the ask for tonight would be to have the board vote to schedule a joint meeting with the planning board to discuss it. They have issues about the property. In particular, they were concerned, let me get this up here, that we had the proposal that we had received from Mr. Guthrie for the K property here, including a portion to be set aside for open space, included Mr. Guthrie's draft proposal to alter the subdivision plan for Durkee in a way that kept some open space here and moved the development elsewhere. If that's to be part of it, then that in particular is of interest to the planning board, because the Durkee subdivision is in front of them right now. So if there are to be any alterations to the subdivision plan in order to meet goals expressed by the selectmen for the K property, the planning board would really like to have a conversation with you about that. So in order to move it forward, the suggestion is that this board meet with the planning board this Thursday night, and we can try to resolve issues there.
Do we have a meeting with ZBA on Thursday night? I have ZBA Kimball on my calendar.
Yeah.
Yes?
We have, there's a meeting in this room and on the third floor.
Okay,
So
so,
we aren't,
Not posted.
we're sending town council to that meeting.
okay.
ZBA.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, so tonight we have, as spelled out in the motion package here, whether or not we're going to assign the right of first refusal to a group,
Nonprofit.
a nonprofit organization. And, you know, it was Littleton Conservation Trust that originally had spoke about this, and we're hearing that they can't take it, so that's not going to happen. So let's take that first motion, and is there any public comment on that one piece? Seeing none, I'd look for a motion, and then we can talk about moving forward.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 61B, subsection 9, to not to assign to a nonprofit conservation organization the town's option for right of first refusal for a bona fide offer of $850,000 for the property located along Grimes Lane in Littleton, Mass., comprising approximately 43 acres and shown as Assessor's Map R-08, Parcel 13, and known as the K property.
Second.
Moving to second, and all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed. Okay, so now, it's a matter of scheduling a meeting And as Mr. Bergman said, the chair of the planning board wants to meet before the 10th, and we'll try and make that happen within the next day or two. So where this is in front of them right now, and a host community agreement may be appropriate at this time. Are there any comments to that from the board? Or concerns?
No concerns. The HCA, as drafted at the very least, seems very much in line with the conversations we've had previously. So certainly, I'm going to endorse it as we go forward, knowing what we know at this point. The only thing I would ask, if I may, of Mr. Guthrie, with the planning board and looking at the current jerky proposal you have there, and maybe moving that, is that going to move it east or to the northeast? Keeping the same, in other words, into the K property? Would some of that development move into the K property?
If you pull that map up, I could show you what we did.
You're moving them over here?
We pulled them off.
Yeah, they were
We're
here.
down from 30, we took the 5 off that were over here in this corridor, figuring if this was something that was of interest to the town, we could combine that with this open space and create a buffer from Foster and also some protection from the residents on this end, kind of a contiguous piece of open space, wildlife corridor, even maybe a pedestrian or biking corridor, depending on whether it's a trail and what you can do on your own land relative to its trails, but at least the land was there. And as you know, we started the process through conversation, and that was a piece we could commit to at the time. So we took the lots off, not knowing where they go, if they end up down here someday, or I know the town has some potential other thoughts for the land that's down along the highway and the train, so it's off the table for now.
I'd say it results in a large contiguous area then, of open space. Thank you.
Mr. DeCoste, any questions?
No, I would echo what Mr. Vella.
I'll open it up to the public. Any questions or comments? Yes, sir.
I was wondering one thing.
Please state your
My
name.
name's Ed Mish from Grimes Lane.
You got it.
The $850,000 that was purchased, does that include the 2 lots that are on Foster and the 2 lots that are on Grimes Lane? Is that included into the 850?
It includes 2 on Foster because they are wet. It does not include the 2 on Grimes.
Okay, so those were additional costs.
We're not associated with the 2 on Grimes at this time.
Okay.
You're not going to be owning them?
Correct.
Okay, I thought you had to buy everything or nothing.
They broke out the 2 that were on
Okay.
Grimes for some reason. I don't know if it's a family issue.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, they broke those out.
Any other questions? All right, so I'd look for a motion to close this public hearing.
Second.
And move and second. All those in favor? Aye. Now I'd look for a motion to schedule a meeting with the planning board on December 10th.
Okay. Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to schedule a joint meeting with the Planning Board on Thursday, December 10th, 2015, at 7:15 PM to discuss the K and Durkee properties and a proposed host community agreement between the town and buyer developer.
Second.
Then moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Guthrie.
Thank
We'll
you.
see you Thursday. All right, it is 7:10. We're going to open up this public hearing for the Marriott, and we're going to come back to public input and members' updates. So,
See you, Tom.
Mr. Clerk, would you do the honors of reading the public hearing notice, please?
Public hearing, all alcoholic beverages license application, Point Hospitality LLC, doing business as Marriott Courtyard, Boston, Littleton, 495 Great Road, also known as 102 Constitution Avenue, Littleton, Mass. The Littleton Board of Selectmen will conduct a public hearing on Monday, December 7, 2015, at 7:10 PM in the Littleton Town Offices, Room 103, 37 Shattuck Street, Littleton, Massachusetts, to act on all alcoholic restaurant license application under Mass General Law, Chapters 138, Section 12, Hotel License, submitted by Tim Burkhart, manager of Point Hospitality LLC, doing business as Marriott Courtyard, Boston, Littleton, For the property located at 495 Great Road, also known as 102 Constitution Avenue, Littleton, Massachusetts, and known as The Point, a mixed-use development comprising of 7 lots and approximately 90.27 acres of land, shown as parcels 1-1, 1-2, 1-3, 1-4, 1-5, 1-6, and 1-7 on Assessor Map R18. The applicant is seeking approval for the sale of all alcoholic beverages Monday through Sunday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the premises described as a 4-story hotel consisting of 64,488 square feet with 1 primary entrance and 2 additional public entrances and 7 exits. The first floor will consist of a front desk, lobby area, office space, bistro bar, 800 square foot outdoor patio seating area, pool and fitness room, and 7 guest suites. The second, third, and fourth floors have 36 guest rooms at 495 Great Road, also known as 102 Constitution Avenue, Littleton, Massachusetts. Comments therein may be submitted in writing to the Selectmen, Town Administrator's Office, 37 Shattuck Street, Littleton, Massachusetts, by noon on Friday, December 4, 2015, or in person at the hearing. By the Littleton Board of Selectmen, James Carr, Chairman.
Thank you there, Mr. Clerk. This public hearing is now open. I'll change my mind. We got plenty of time before our next agenda item, so we can take this matter up right now, and I'll go back to the public input and member updates. Hello.
Hi,
And you are?
Tim Burkhart.
Tim, nice to meet you. Why don't you give us a little update of the hotel and what the requirements and why you're requesting all liquor license?
Sure, things are going well from a construction standpoint. We anticipate opening mid-April, latest probably early May. There's a need for a liquor license. We plan on having a small service bar with about 35 or 40 seats as part of it's incorporated into the lobby design. No room service, just service within that space.
Okay, thank you. Chief, both chiefs, any issues?
No problem whatsoever, it's probably one of the cleanest one we've dealt with yet.
Okay. Mr. Lozinski, all set? Okay. Members, questions?
Just a quick, go ahead. Just a quick question about the outdoor patio seating. I'm assuming, just from doing more traveling than my family cares to admit, there's some sort of fencing or wrought iron keeping
Yes, containing that area.
in the area, so any alcohol would not be taken outside.
Correct. Yeah, and that'll be seasonal, obviously, too. We wouldn't try to keep that open through the winter months either.
Nice.
Ms. Ravello?
No, the chief said such a good thing, but they seem to have name recognition around the world, so well done. The only thing I'm going to add is there's actually a lot of folks sitting behind you, members of the Littleton Business Association. If you may consider that organization as a possible membership, please.
Sure.
Thank you.
Nice, nicely done.
Selectman Hebert?
Just 2 things. So you're our first major hotel in our town. We have a smaller inn and maybe other smaller lodging places, but you're our first big one. What do you think might be some challenges of being our first kind of major hotel?
That's an interesting question. I don't see any challenges between the relationship with the hotel and the town. I think the point, I'm sure the town's prepared for that development as it's been in the planning stages for years, so I really don't anticipate any. None come to mind.
That's good. Okay, so one I can envision from your perspective, maybe less from our perspective, I'm just curious, is transportation. So I know when I travel for business, I may rent a car, I may want a taxi, right? And it's not exactly an everyday thing that people get taxis around here. So I'd just be, and maybe it's not an actual question, just a seed to be planted, how you might handle the
Sure.
transportation situation.
We are going to have a shuttle van as part of our services within the hotel.
To the airport?
Not to the airport,
Okay.
no.
shops.
But within,
Shops.
yeah, within a 5-10 mile radius to
That's
local
cool.
businesses and any wedding venues. There could be travel for wedding groups back and forth from the venue to the hotel.
That's a great
on the
idea.
weekends.
I like that. And that's for hotel guests only?
Correct.
Okay.
Ski facility.
All right. Cool. Yeah, that's a great one. All right, that's all. Thank you.
Mr. Knox?
In your bar section, is that meant for the people who are staying, or are you going to be doing advertising to attract people from the outside?
We certainly wouldn't refuse service to anyone outside, non-hotel guests per se, that want to come in to have a drink. I don't anticipate that being a large portion of what we're after. It's really an amenity to our guests that are staying within the hotel.
One other question, a long time since I saw the plans. Do you have any meeting rooms planned in your establishment?
We do. One meeting room, it's approximately 700 square feet, so it's relatively small, not a whole lot bigger than this one.
Okay, thank you.
May I piggyback?
Sure, go ahead.
You mentioned a shuttle. Please consider the train station as a shuttle. Don't know
As a
if,
stop.
back and forth, yes.
Yeah, sure.
Don't know if people are going to want to use it, certainly coming from a long distance, if flying into Boston, perhaps rental car more than train out here, but please consider that.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, I think Mr. Knox actually asked my question, so I'm good. It's good to see construction going well. The point itself is coming along quite nicely. We have these rolling grand openings in the past 3 months, so we look forward to your grand opening too. Any other questions?
When is that grand opening?
He doesn't know yet, right?
Well, we typically do a soft opening, and we're shooting to open the doors to guests April 15th to maybe May 15th, somewhere in that time frame. And then maybe a month after, we'll do a grand opening at that point, kind of a celebration and a ribbon cutting, that kind of thing.
Summer. Great.
Right around the same time I set up my Uber.
There's 2 public hearing notices, there's a common vic, also as well as the
Right.
public, there's also the liquor license.
So,
And then you can take, the motion approves both, but you may just want to note that.
so let's close out the liquor license.
We have to close the hearing.
Sorry. I move and second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Second hearing, Mr. Clerk, if you would so.
Okay, so we got the all alcoholic beverages, which is actually the one I read.
Yep. No, page 3 is...
That one right there.
Not the particular. Okay. Got it. Legal notice, Board of Selectmen, public hearing, common particular application, Point Hospitality LLC, doing business at Marriott Courtyard, Boston, Littleton, 495 Great Road, also known as 102 Constitution Avenue, Littleton, Mass. Is there any reason we can't stipulate the rest, that we already read it?
Yeah,
Is that legal?
as printed.
As printed.
Perfect.
As printed, thank you.
So, the public hearing is now open. Members, questions?
None here.
Ms. Hebert?
We did eventually get a food service permit from the Board of Health, right?
I believe so.
Says the chair.
Okay. Okay, I'm good.
Mr. Ravello, any questions? Mr. DeCoste?
I'm good.
I just have one. What are you planning on serving? What extents of the menu going to be? What's going to look like?
Sure, it's called a bistro. It's part of Marriott's lobby design. It's kind of incorporated into the active area of the lobby. Breakfast, there'll be kind of a Starbucks feel to it. We'll actually be serving Starbucks coffee, pastry, that kind of thing. You can get light egg sandwiches, those kind of things in the morning. Then we roll into a light lunch, sandwiches, not any major cooking going on during the day, and then in the evening, salads, again, light fare in the evening.
All right. I'm just making one comment. I know Mr. Avella talked about the LBA. Come out of your parking lot, take a right. We got some great farm stands right down the road. Encourage you to take a look at their produce and their eggs and poultry and all that stuff. So that'd be good. Thank you. Look for a motion to close the hearing.
Second.
Been moved and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Hearing is closed. Any questions from the public? Comments? Seeing none, I'd look for a motion.
All right, ready for this one? Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to approve the application of Point Hospitality LLC, Tim Burkhardt, manager, doing business as Marriott Courtyard, Boston, Littleton, for 102 Constitution Ave, The Point, for an all-alcoholic restaurant hotel license under Mass General Law, Chapter 138, subsection 12, for the sale of all alcoholic beverages Monday through Sunday from 11 a.m. to 1 a.m. at the premises described as a 4-story hotel consisting of 64,488 square feet with 1 primary entrance and 2 additional public entrances and 7 exits. A first floor consisting of a front desk, lobby area, office space, bistro, bar, 800 square foot outdoor patio seating area, pool and fitness room, and 7 guest suites, and second, third, and fourth floors, each having 36 guest rooms, with issuance of said license to be subject to ABCC approval and passing all local inspections, and further to approve a common particular license for the same premises.
Been moved and seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Say that again.
It's on TV, rewind it. Thank you very much, good luck. We look forward to your opening.
Thank you, appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, so we're going to jump back on the agenda to public input. Do we have any public input? Seeing none, member input. Mr. Knox?
Nothing here.
Ms. Hebert?
2 quick things. Holiday Bazaar this past weekend, it was awesome. I saw a lot of faces that I see in the crowd. I left there with $0 in my pocket. I want to give a shout out to one particular area. It was in the back right-hand corner. It was the 3D printing area where the one of our high school teachers, Dan Hogan, teaches his students and allows them to use in an entrepreneurial fashion 3D printing techniques, including engraving ornaments and building ornaments and doing all sorts of really cool stuff. So I like to see, science, the holidays, entrepreneurship, and community all wrapped in one. So it was great. And congratulations to Mo's on their opening as well.
Buenos! Mr. Ravello?
Yes, sir, thank you. First one, I have 2, please. Save the date. Littleton Country Gardeners presents a holiday house tour. It's on Sunday, December 13th, from 1 to 4 p.m. Tickets can be purchased in advance. The best way to do this is either through Reuben Hoare Library or the Congregational Church of Littleton, and that's where it'll begin. Tickets are $25 in advance, 30 days the day of the tour. So again, that's December 13th, from 1 to 4 p.m., and it's to tour 6 unique homes, plus the newly renovated Congregational Church. The second one, Master Plan Update Steering Committee. We're making some progress there, Mr. Chairman. Where we are at this point is we've received proposals from 4 different possible consultants. We're in the process now, and that's the selection subcommittee of the Master Plan Update Steering Committee, reviewing those. Tomorrow evening, right here in this room at 6:30, we'll be having a public discussion about that and where we think we're leaning. And then on the 16th of December, we will hold, starting at 6 p.m., again down here in this room, a series of interviews with the prospective consultants. So certainly the public is welcome. And then the next full committee meeting is on December 22nd. So we're in good shape to, and it looks like we'll be able to make a recommendation to the planning board by the 14th of January, which is the planning board's meeting in January. And certainly for our interview process, the public is welcome, as is the planning board. Invitation's been extended, and to the Board of Selectmen at large, also invited.
Fantastic. That's good news.
Thank you.
Mr. DeCoste?
Mr. Chairman, I do have a couple. Just piggybacking on Selectman Hebert's welcome to Mo's. Mo's did a grand opening, as we know, on Thursday. They did a soft opening on Wednesday, which they allowed the Littleton High School hockey team to benefit from a fundraiser, which netted the hockey team over $2,000. So a shout out and thank you to the folks at Mo's for helping out the hockey team and our youth athletes. Another point, we had been talking about the MBTA earlier. I just want to say, first of all, thank you to all the work that Keith's been doing. He's been staying on top of this and keeping us abreast of it. And with the MBTA coming up tonight, the Durkee and Cape property coming up tonight, I want to be mindful of parking down at the station. I know that Keith has been communicating with the MBTA, and it is part of the master plan, and so I just want to make sure that we're staying on top of it. I've had a number of people come up to me and say, we need to do something for resident parking down at the train station, so I just want to keep that at the forefront, make us all mindful of that, and keep thinking about that and seeing if any opportunities come up for us to do something there. The last thing is, a chapter is closing. Weber Florist closed a little while ago. They are in the process of selling their property, and they have separated out the retail portion of it, which is being sold to the Minor Chord, which will be moving from Aubuchon after they do some renovations down to the Weber home and moving their business down there. So I wish them all well. But aside from that, there's a lot of property that is adjacent in the back of that property that is contiguous with the high school. And I want us to, again, be mindful of that property. I think anything that abuts any of our town property is something we should be aware of. It is something that I would like to kind of take the lead on and communicate with the Webbers and see if there's any opportunities for the town to be in line if for us to purchase that land, where it is contiguous with the high school, and they're not making any more land, so there's only so much land for us to do whatever we need to do around the high school. So I just wanted to bring that up publicly. I did speak with them earlier today, wish them well. So I just wanted to make everybody aware of it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have nothing. We have 5 minutes before our next public hearing. Why don't we take a look at the donation? That's a quick and easy one. I'd love to accept money. 8C. We have a unsolicited donation of $2,500 for community education donated by DCU for the fire department. Chief, any comments to that?
Our fire prevention gentlemen were out, they were having a conversation with somebody from the bank. Actually, it was in a public setting. And within a week later, we received a check and the accompanying letter. That should be in your packet. Basically to almost match the SAFE program, so it would enhance our public education. Be it with the fire prevention in Shaker Lane, the middle school, and assisting us with CPR also in the middle school and the high school.
Outstanding. Board members, any questions?
No, just one, can I just read these two paragraphs?
Absolutely.
I think it's awesome. On behalf of Digital Federal Credit Union, I'm pleased to provide the Littleton Fire Department with the enclosed check for $2,500. This donation represents DCU's support of your organization's efforts in providing programs that will make a difference. As a socially responsible organization, DCU is committed to partnering with organizations such as yours that make a difference in the communities we serve. We hope this contribution makes a difference. That's awesome.
Definitely makes a huge difference. The other thing that it'll be helping us out with is the Senior Safe program. We purchase carbon monoxide combination smoke detectors and put those in all the seniors' homes, anybody that calls. It's a free service, and so we average about 70 a year that we've been putting in for the last couple of years. So any extra contribution is great to help offset that.
Outstanding.
It's just a little play on the loose lips sink ships. It's kind of like loose lips bring gifts.
Absolutely.
I like it.
Whatever works.
It works.
Whatever works. Mr. Knox, any comments?
None.
Mr. Ravello, any comments?
Thank you, DCU.
Yep, thank you.
Very much.
And continue the good work, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Ask for a motion?
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 44, subsection 53A, to receive an unsolicited gift of $2,500 from the Digital Federal Credit Union to be deposited into a special gift fund account to be used without further appropriation by the fire chief towards costs associated with community education by the fire department.
Moved and seconded, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Chief.
We've got another minute or so. Mr. Clerk, why don't we take a look at the meeting minutes from November 16th?
I did.
Yes, you did. Me too. Any questions, board members? Nope. Is that a motion?
Yeah, let's see the date. Move that we accept meeting minutes from November 16th, 2015, and knowing that I was absent, so I'll recuse myself from voting.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all those in favor? Aye. Thank you very much. Yep. So our next item is at 6:30? 7:30. My glasses are right there, you see. It's a public hearing on the tax classification hearing. Is Mr. Venuti here? Hi, Fred.
No,
Did he leave already? Oh, Steve, nice to see you.
The Board of Assessors.
It's the Board of Assessors.
It's the Board of Assessors. all at once. Hello, Board of Assessors.
This money was in the chip shops in the trunks. Are they texting
Don't
you?
let us detain you.
It's like a social experiment.
Yeah, you're
Thank you, Mr. Ravello. All right, it's now 6:30. We will have a public hearing on the fiscal year 2016 property tax, I'm sorry, the property tax classification hearing. Mr. Ravello, would you do the honors of reading that public hearing notice, please?
Notice of hearing, Board of Selectmen, Town of Littleton, tax classification hearing. The Board of Selectmen of the Town of Littleton will conduct a public hearing on the Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 40, Section 56, on Monday, December 7, 2015, at 7:30 p.m. in the Selectmen's Hearing Room, Room 103, Littleton Town Offices, 37 Shattuck Street, Littleton, Massachusetts, on the issue of allocating the local property tax levy among the 5 property classes: residential, open space, commercial, industrial, personal, for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2016. Information from the Board of Assessors concerning various policy options will be available for public inspection on Thursday, December 3, 2015, in Selectmen's office and at the town website, www.littletonma.org. All interested parties and/or parties wishing to be heard will be afforded an opportunity to be heard at this time. Littleton Board of Selectmen, James Carr, Chair.
Hearing is now open. We have a small slide presentation that Mr. Venuti is going to do. Mr. Knox and Mr. Ravello are involved with the LBA. And you at the last meeting, too, Paul? Were you at the last meeting? When this was done? No. So Mr. Knox was at the last meeting. This was rolled out, or this presentation was rolled out, and I asked that it be presented here tonight. So we'll let Mr. Venuti, the town treasurer. Fred, do you want to get involved? Good?
I'm happy to help Steve when he needs it.
Okay, we'll let Steve. Go ahead, Steve.
So this, to get things started, this little PowerPoint presentation was just to give a little clarification to the entire process for the benefit of the people here in the room and people watching at home. Classification, the setting of the tax rate involves 2 different pieces of the equation. First is the tax levy, which was voted at the May town meeting. So that's the appropriation that the town is already authorized to spend. This classification hearing tries to determine who's going to pay for that, which property classes will pay. And to determine that, we have to talk about property values. FY16 was a revaluation year. By state law, it's every 3 years. So the governor did introduce legislation today to extend that to every 5 years. Don't know if the outcome of that, but so our next reval could either be FY19 or 21. Property values increased significantly this year. We'll see the deep breakout of that in the next couple of slides. The other thing that was new for this year was the assessors hired a couple of different firms to look at our commercial and personal property accounts. Basically just to go over and validate the information that we have in our database, just to make sure that we're assessing properly and collecting the actual values that we should be. In addition to that, internal staff looked at hundreds of residential parcels this year in the same manner, just to make sure that our property record cards are accurate. So let's talk a little bit about property values. You can see from the chart above, the past 4 years have been basically flat as far as property values in town. This year was a significant increase, $141 million of additional property for this year. Total property value in Littleton now is $1,625,000,000. It was $1,471,000,000, I believe, last year. Residential property is 78.8% of the total property value in town, and you can see the percentages for the commercial and the personal property. There's two components to property value increases. There's what's happened to the existing property in town, and then there's new growth. So existing property, you can see from the green, the past 4 years, we've seen declines in the valuation of existing property in town. 23.7 million decrease in property value on average for each of those years. That decrease was offset by new growth in those years. You can see it averaged 23.6 million for each year in growth. So you can see why that previous chart was basically flat for total property values. Decrease in existing property offset by an increase in new growth. That stayed until FY16, and you can see both sections of that chart increased for this year. FY16 saw an increase of 87.6 million in existing property and 53.2 million in new growth. And that's about double what the average has been in the previous 4 years. So significant value increases. To move on with property values, so a single-family home, we saw those 4 years of flat, and you can see that rate in the graph. Extended it back to FY07, which was the last time that the values were high. It's $415,000 right there. They slumped down to FY10, remained constant through 15, and now we're seeing the uptick in the average price of a single-family home in 16, up to $395,000. Commercial property through that whole time period was basically flat. We're seeing the uptick this year. When we look at the average value of commercial property, we're taking out, the assessors want to capture basically the average commercial property in town, and that's really the people sitting behind me, basically. We're taking out the IBMs, we're taking out some of the larger personal commercial property accounts. Basically looking at values from about $100,000 up to about $2 million. So that average increased to $528,000 this year. So when we put those pieces together and we're looking at the distribution of value across the two classes, we're looking at residential property at $1,280,000,000, or about 79% of the total pie, and commercial and industrial and personal property, 21% of $344 million. Again, that total of $1.6 billion. When we talk about setting a tax rate, we first have to calculate the single tax rate. So that's the starting point for any discussion in splitting the rate. The single tax rate's calculated by taking the levy, the $32,347,000 that was voted at town meeting, and distributing that equitably throughout the two property classes. So they're paying a proportional share of that levy. Residents would be responsible for 79% of the levy, since they're 79% of the total value, and the same with commercial, 21%. And you can see the split outs on the levy, 25.5 million for the residents and 6.8 million on commercial. We don't have a single tax rate. We have a split tax rate. So what does that mean? That means a portion of the single rate residential levy gets shifted to the commercial base. That shift is voted by the Board of Selectmen at tonight's hearing. And the only caveat to that is that the amount that's shifted can only be 50%. You can only shift 50% more in the commercial base that they have. So for example, using the round numbers there, CIP is responsible for $6 million of the levy. We can only put an additional $3 million, or 50% of that $6 billion, onto the commercial base. That calculation is done each year. This year, it's the 150%, the 1.5 factor. Some years, depending on the calculation, it could go up to 1.75%. So in this example, we're splitting the tax rate. We start off with our pies. If you remember, the residential piece was 79% on the single rate. In this example, and it's just an example, we assume that the factor that the selectmen vote would be 0.88. So what that means is 88%, this is where it can get confusing, 88% of the 79% that we saw remains with the residential tax base, property values. That 12%, that remaining 12%, is shifted to the commercial base. Now, when you look at the entire piece of the pie, the entire levy, that 12% that we're taking from the residential piece is actually 10% of the total. So the residential base goes from 79% down to 69%, and the commercial base goes from 21 up to 31%. And this is what the allocation would look like. So essentially, this is the split tax rate. In this example, the residents who represent 79% of the value will be paying 69% of the levy, and the commercial base that represents 21% of the value will be paying 31% of the levy. And down the bottom, you can see the resulting split tax rates. So in this example, our residential rate would be $17.51, commercial rate would be $28.78. And there's three things down the bottom, the very bottom. Those are some of the terms that we may hear tonight. The shift, again, that's the amount of the single rate residential levy that's being shifted to the commercial base. It was 12% of the 79%. The residential factor is the 0.88 or the 88% that was voted. This is 88% of the 79% that's remaining with the residents. And the CIP factor, we've increased, in this example, the commercial tax base by 44%, so under the 50% that we could do. Historically, these have been the CIP factors that have been voted. You can see the high was in 2007 when we actually hit the 1.5%. The low, 2001 at 1.29. Last year was 1.45, and the average for those 15 years was 1.42. So moving forward, the assessors gave us some estimates for what they see in the future. What we're looking for is values to be basically flat for the next couple of years for both residential and commercial. The decrease that you see is just the normal depreciation that we'll see in personal property over the next couple of years. In the pink, the new growth remains strong in 17 and 18 and even into 19. And we can see new growth on the next slide. The estimated new growth, as you see, residential is very high in the next year. This is just an estimate for the by the assessors for what they see happening. Plans that may have come in, it all depends on when the occupancy permits are actually pulled. So things may shift from one year to the other, but this is their best guess of the next 3 years. If you were to stack the commercial and personal property on top of one another, they basically equal the residential piece of the pie moving forward. So you can see in the very bottom, residential as a percentage of total kind of stays the same. It dips a little percentage-wise, but not significantly for the next 3 years. It still remains around 78% of the total. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Catherine Miller, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to, as Steve pointed out, you can do 1.5% for the commercial class. The residential class can't pay less than 65% of their value. And as we go through this discussion, and it's a reminder I always make, you're voting on the factor and on the allocation, not on the tax rate, because when you throw the tax rate into the discussion, it skews it a bit, because that's really a function of what our values are and the levy is. So if we were to double the values in town, for example, but the levy were to stay the same, the tax rate would be halved, but it would still have the same impact. So that's, I just wanted to bring that out.
So Catherine is our chief assessor in town. Stephen mentioned two companies that you hired to kind of assist in this reeval year. Can you give us a little update as to what your process was in that?
So we used
folks know?
RRC because they're experts in personal property. That's their specialty. And when I started looking at the personal property, it came to my attention that some of the accounts hadn't been visited in 10-plus years. It's a lot to take on to go out to these personal property accounts, especially if you're not an expert in that field, because you're going to so many different types of businesses. You're going to automotives, you're going to research companies, supermarkets, mini malls, and to know what is personal property is very difficult in all these different aspects. So we just hired them to go out, pick up some new growth, and also inspect the personal property for us in-house, just to make sure that it was done because of the big span of not having them inspected. For the commercial industrial, we use Patriot, and that is our software. That's who we use for our residential, for all across the board. And what we utilize them this year for is to go out to 35 of the big properties like Hewlett-Packard and some of the big ones that are hard to go out and to inspect, and to analyze the income and expense reports that we send out every year. And so we wanted to make sure that this reval certification came in on time.
And it did.
This afternoon.
Just in the nick of time. Any members of the assessors, any comments? No? Okay. Good, you all set? Board members, comments, questions? Mr. Knox?
Not right now.
Okay.
Either.
Let's see. All right, Mr. Revella.
Just explain what you're thinking, how to proceed.
Well, I think right now we'll deliberate. I'll open it up to the public so that they can have their input, and then we can have a deliberation again as to setting the rate.
Okay.
After we close the hearing, I'll open it up to the public.
So you'd like some initial deliberations now?
Yes.
All right. Based on that clarification, you said. All right, can you throw the last slide up there again, please? The new growth estimate, please, Keith. The reason I'm asking this slide to be thrown back up is that when we look at it, the residential factor remains pretty much the residential percentage remains somewhat flat over those 4 years that Steve was mentioning, at just about 78 and some short change %. What's important to us as we've been looking at economic development in the community is how do we increase the commercial base. So we're not talking rates, we're not talking about taxes, we're talking about the base. The base remains constant. As long as the base remains constant, the impact on that smaller base, roughly 21% of the commercial properties, remains disproportionate to our entire tax structure here in town. It's by growing that base, and that when we start doing these factors, we can start bringing them down so that this gap that we have now between the residential rate and the commercial rate begins to decrease, and it becomes a much more correct, in my mind at the very least, a way that the commercial property should be paying taxes. Now, it's not like I'm a philanthropist here, and not the goodness of my heart to say, let's lower the commercial rate. The thing is, overall, the best thing for our community is to have a vibrant business community. There's many ways that we can make that happen, and then advertise it that it's happening to the businesses that exist today, to encourage them to want to stay, to be able to stay, and then importantly also businesses that are not in Littleton now, but may want to relocate or expand to some town. How does Littleton look as a town? Two very important factors play into that, in addition to many of the other things when we talk about schools, things like that, the workforce, the education of the folks in town. But certainly the tax structure that we have in town, businesses are going to look at, as are they going to look at permitting. Permitting is not on the table this evening, but it's certainly something that has to be in our minds. Tonight, what is on our table is the factor that we're going to be voting on between the commercial and the residential. Last year, we took a very strong stand as a board to begin closing that gap. Partially, it helps the businesses that already exist. It becomes attractive to other businesses outside of town. And as businesses move to town, it increases that base so that 78% becomes a smaller figure for the residents. And that's what becomes important, is how do we reduce that? And the way we reduce it is by increasing the commercial base. We've seen the developments that we've had here recently in the last couple of years as far as housing developments go. 15 Great Road, very large structures, and people moving into town, which contributes to that residential rate staying high for sure. But I think we can take an action tonight that speaks loudly to the community, the business community that is resident to the town at this point, and that business community outside of town that may be interested in moving to town, that we're interested in bringing them and being inviting to them. And one of the ways we can do that is working on this current tax split that is onerously disproportionate at this point. Thank you.
Mr. DeCoste.
Tell you, I've been trying to be a quick study and come up to speed here on this matter before us, and setting, not the rates, but the tax classification. It's been quite an education. I've spoken with a number of business owners, some of whom are friends, and I'm happy to be a sounding board for them and try to understand better from their perspective what the impact is of the rate. One of the things I agree greatly with you, PJ, is the way to bring everybody's rate down is in new business growth. And I think that in order for us to do that, we need to be more proactive with research and development and like Taylor Street and a lot of the vacant larger buildings that we have, because that's what brings in the personal property tax and helps to offset everybody's out of pocket. That's what it comes down to. You know, whether we call it rate, factor, and there's so many terms of my head's still spinning. But I think that's important for us to keep in mind. I think that whatever we decide tonight is going to be, there's not going to be a huge shift, I don't believe, to anybody, whether it's the commercial or the residential. I don't think there's going to be a huge impact either way, just because there are limits in place that restrict us from doing anything too drastic. What I would like to see moving forward is for us to have some sort of a plan going forward, so that each year when we come up with this, it's we have a goal, whether it's a band that we stay within. You know, we never exceed this percentage to the commercial, or this, you know, we never go to this point with the residential. I'd like to see us have some sort of objectives and directives to keep us within some sort of a parameter, so that it's not, I mean, I was ignorant to this, frankly, up until a couple months ago. And in the last couple of weeks, it's been like I said, quite an education for me. I appreciate the input from those that have spoken with me on both sides, whether it's commercial or residential. And for me to say right now that I think the factor that we should go with tonight is X, I'm not prepared to do that right now, but I do believe that...
But you will be.
I will, yeah. I don't have a choice but to be. But I want to get as much input and more input, because I've got a small pocket of folks that I've spoken with, but I want to try to, there's a lot of people here tonight to speak, and I'd like to hear what they have to say, and perhaps that's what's going to influence my decision tonight. But I do want, out of this, I'd like to see us, and keep adding stuff for us to be aware of and cognizant of. We're all going to have to go full-time with Board of Selectmen. I keep coming up with ideas, but not to give myself that much credit. But I think that... Pardon? What?
The idea is welcomed.
Thank you. But I do think we need to add this as a priority for us as a board to create some structure, so that each year when this comes up, whether it's the 5 of us sitting here or another 5 or whatever the composition is, so that there are some parameters within which to work. And there's going to be exceptions to every rule. There may be some years that some tough decisions have to be made, but I think that if we have some guidelines, I think that's important for us to put those in place.
Mr. Chair, go ahead. Just to double on what was being said too, when you talked about the new business growth and how important that is, it wasn't that many years ago, I think the residential part was up to 83%.
Right.
So we're moving in the right direction, that's extremely important. I also, as a selectman, this is one of the days that you hate to be here, because, no one wants to see taxes go up, but taxes are going to go up anyway. The town has already said that, they gave us that levy that they approved. Now, the proportionate part is what's hard. In my opinion, I believe in what Paul had said earlier, I think we have to start making a shift back from where we had reached that high a long time ago. I think it's important for the public to realize, too, that I'm not speaking of the really big businesses in town, but being a small business person like myself, all the things that we have to go through and all the things that we have to pay for, whether it's fees, continuing education, joining boards, paying your rent, making donations, and the donations is good, but who do they go to first? They hit the small businesses, and I don't know how many times since like September that there's a knock on the door, or there's a phone call, and we are supporting our town that way, and people should understand. Sometimes when people say, "Oh, you're in business, this is easy," some people don't realize how close that is sometimes of being a business and not being a business. And you always have to smile because you want people to know you're doing really well, but sometimes it's hard for certain businesses to make it. And there's all these decisions right here that they're important. No one wants to see residential taxes go up, nobody, but I think we still have to start making that shift, maybe a little bit at a time, so we can offset that burden that the business community has right now.
So I think Paul brought up a good point, and that is about permitting process. And the growth we've seen in town as far as businesses, I think, is commendable to not only this board, but the planning board, and the way we deal with the zoning, expedited permitting, and such. And I think we will continue to see that as we've seen the Point come online. The property right across the street is now being developed. Good location in town, right off of 495. We need to talk about downtown. Downtown is an issue for businesses. We all know that. And it has to really square on some type of sewering or some type of waste, waste system, whether it be a large sewer plant or some type of moderate growth of the sewer system down there to fill those buildings down there. As Chuck said, we got empty buildings over on Taylor Street. We've talked about doing some type of overlay district up there to benefit those businesses to, become active again. And we need to really take a hard look at that also. In regards to the taxes and the tax rates and the split, as Selectman Knox says, this is the worst time. But we got to recognize that the town has said to us, this is how much we want to spend. They did that last May. Moving forward during this budget process, I think we need to take a hard look at what we're asking our department heads for their budgets. And if we're going to do some type of split, I think we need to tie that directly into the town's budget, or any type of decrease in the split. We need to do that, make that part of the budgetary process. Otherwise, we have to pay for it. And the residents have to pay for it, and the businesses have to pay for it, because that's what the town wants us to do. And we have made a slight shift last year. With the values going up, the rates going down, we have to take another look at this tonight. I mean, we've been averaging about 11.71% in the shift. And last year, we were at 11.68, I believe it was. Let's see, it was 11.687, yeah, 11.68. So, I would not be opposed to keeping it as is right now. That would be my opinion. Work this process into the budgetary process, because we're asked to act on a budget that was approved in May. So if we can work this into, as you said, some type of process, it has to be tied into the budget process. And that's, I think, where we need to start. That's all I have. Any other questions?
No, good.
All right. Any questions from the assessors? Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Don Armstrong. And I think it's important to realize that there's a 4 times impact on business if you shift 1% residential, their businesses go down by 4%. So that's what you're looking at here when you do it. But a couple of years ago, we were here with a different board, and we had talked slightly about moving in that direction. And I honest to God, I haven't followed how you've done. But small changes, and nobody likes paying taxes, right? I mean, you're not going to find anybody that likes to pay tax. And I know you guys have to be elected, where, you sit here and say, well, I'm going to make a decision today that could impact my political career. I mean, really, that's what people think about, right? You raise the taxes.
That's what we hear. We need, as CEOs of the town, we have to make those decisions, and if it impacts elections process, so be it.
Yeah, but I know that, but what I'm saying is, a lot of people in Littleton said, we want to become a business-friendly town. I've heard that for the 40 years I've lived here, right? And I honest to God, I don't know what we've done in 40 years.
You want to talk, that's a whole discussion
I
for itself, because for you to say that we haven't become a business-friendly town, I think is unfair. Because we have.
All right.
We have.
Okay, but this split is not business-friendly.
Okay, all right.
That's what I'm saying. This split is not business-friendly. And it's opposed to your political ambitions for you to vote to move it the other way. To take 1% away, add 1% to residential, because the residential people vote, right? I mean, 79, they're the people that vote. Now, business guys vote too, but there aren't that big a percentage.
May I respond to that?
Right? Yeah, well, unless you live here.
You all set? We'll get it, we'll turn it into the public afterwards, as soon as the hearing's closed.
Nobody likes tax increases. There's been tax increases yearly. And so what I'm saying is, at some point, I think if you want to become more business-friendly, I'll use more business-friendly, then you need to consider some shift. And that's just a philosophy of the town. I think you were alluding to a strategy. What's the strategy or the direction statement that the selectmen want to make? And it's truly your decision. I mean, the assessors determine value, and you determine the split.
Very good.
To Don's point, some of I think what you said has a base in reality, and then there's certainly going to be perceptions as to each one of us and how we see some of these things. I see it as my responsibility as one of the members of the Board of Selectmen is to put forward a compelling and persuasive argument as to why this is a good idea for the town. So it's town-friendly. It's not an instance of being I want to be business-friendly, it's town-friendly. By increasing the base, and I want to reiterate that, we increase the commercial base, we reduce the residential base, and thus the tax burden does not grow as quickly. None of us are going to sit here and say we're going to reduce taxes. Let's find the last time anybody has done that on the planet. The taxes are going to grow up. The only thing we can do is help to control the growth of that. And by increasing the commercial base, we reduce the residential base, and ultimately that means it's a much slower rate of increase for the residents than it would be otherwise. Because if we drive businesses out of town, if we are not successful in containing businesses and growing new businesses here, that residential factor only grows. Joe mentioned not too many years ago, 83%, which means that residential bill is going to be more. We've made a decision in this town to have some goods and services available to us at a very high level. Okay? We've got good fire, good police, good highway, good schools. Those all come with a bill. We have to pay for it, and we're enjoying the benefits of it in the town. So I'm speaking to you, but I'm speaking to everybody that's in the room and everybody that's on TV and may see this or hear it later on. And that is, by reducing this, small as it may be, But although you hit a good point, too, because it's a 4-to-1 ratio, 1% here is 4% elsewhere. So how do we work that so that the businesses and the folks that are representative in town here today, in this room, are able to continue to do business well and stay in business? As we've seen, there's been enough businesses that have left for various reasons. Tax is not the only reason. That's okay. But it certainly impacts a business's bottom line. And anybody that wants to come to town has to be able to see, we're here to want to work with you to help you become a member of the Littleton community and that the entire community prospers. So I don't want to characterize it as business-friendly. I sincerely, as I'm speaking from my heart on this, it's Littleton town-friendly by doing this evening. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, board members, assessors? All right, I'd look for a motion to close the hearing.
So moved.
You want to get the...
We have some questions.
Okay, all right. We'll open up to the public. Go ahead. I assume you're all LBA members, so if you have one representative,
Yeah, we do, makes it easy for us.
yeah.
I'd like everybody to stand up who's part of the LBA, though. Just 1 second. All right, thank you, appreciate it. I do have a small PowerPoint presentation slide, so do you mind if I plug it? Megan Ford, she's Vice President. I'm James Kennedy, President. Megan's going to lead the presentation today.
Hi, Megan.
Hi, thank you for having me. Megan Ford, 28 Shattuck Street, Littleton resident and business owner in town. And I am a member of the newly formed Littleton Business Association, which was formed this year in 2015. And we are now up to 75 members. At our last meeting a couple of weeks ago, there were over 40 of us present, and they asked me to speak on their behalf. So my voice is here, but I am not speaking from myself. I'm speaking from 75 people, and many who have joined me and are behind me today, and I am so thankful that they're here, and thank you for coming to be here behind me today. I am just here to talk a lot about what you guys have already spoken. People here have talked about town-friendly, but I like to think of it as community, and the community of Littleton benefits from small businesses. Small businesses do lots of things. They create local jobs. They are the foundation of our economy, and they've generated 2 out of every 3 net new jobs over the past 15 years, and that's per the Small Business Association website. Small businesses help the town's goal of economic development, which is consistent with town character. Lower commercial taxes will improve economic development and stimulate that. We also benefit as residents from the town. The community benefits, residents benefit by more local options for shopping. Artisans, coffee shops, live music, bookstores, clothing stores, bars, taverns, pubs, small crafts, galleries, food co-ops. These are all sources of economic development and places that can make it convenient for residents to be a part of the community. Small businesses donate, like you said, Mr. Knox, to local causes. We support the community as small business owners every day. Just recently, I gave money to the Littleton Country Gardeners for the holiday house fair that's happening next Sunday. This type of thing happens all the time. Small businesses support the community. Small businesses provide local jobs. It is really great to be able to live in town and work in town. Walk to my work. If my daughter has something going on at school, I can leave my job and go head down to the middle school. Being able to now hire employees as a small business owner and develop and create jobs that can be for other people that live in town. That's wonderful. So why help us? We need your help. Small businesses have costs that are skyrocketing. We have to pay for our own health care. We have to pay for our employees' health care. We have wages. We're paying for our help that we have. My biggest expense, and I know a lot of us at our last meeting all agreed that rent is one of our biggest expenses. And rent goes up every year. My rent goes up every year. And if taxes go up, you can guarantee that our rent is going to go up. In order for us to survive as a business, if we have high expenses, then whatever it is that we're offering, the price of that's going to go up. So the people that are benefiting, the residents that are shopping at our stores or buying our products could benefit if we can lower our expenses in any way, because then we can lower our prices and whatnot. Everyone's going to benefit. The consumer will benefit, the community will benefit if we can keep our expenses down, and I know rent is one of our biggest expenses. We have also pressure from competition from big businesses like Walmart, e-tailers like Amazon and eBay. So we're up against that, and we need support in any way that we can to remain vibrant as a small business. And as you see up here on the screen, small businesses do not benefit from TIF, from tax increment financing, which is only available for big corporations like IBM, FIBA, Potpourri. Small businesses can't get that tax break. When we had our last meeting, Mr. Annuti was kind enough to give the presentation which you all heard tonight, which was helpful because, Mr. DeCoste, you said you're wrapping your head around this. It is tough stuff to wrap your head around. You think about tax rate, it has nothing to do with that. We're here to talk about the proportion of residential versus commercial and that shift of who's paying what proportion. And when I first heard it, the first thing I thought is, as a business owner, is this seems really unfair. I am getting it. I'm glad I got to hear it a second time tonight because it's really information that doesn't make a lot of sense to the average layperson. But we looked at what you're looking at right now at our last meeting, and Littleton's commercial tax rate is nearly the same as Boston's. Boston has a vibrant, large business district, and it makes sense for a huge city like Boston to have a difference with the commercial taxes being different than residential taxes. But for small towns like Littleton, where business isn't exactly booming like Boston's, other than Air, which is very similar to us, most towns around us have no difference in tax rates between commercial and residential property. So we talked a little bit about split versus single tax rate. If you look at the list, Westford, Chelmsford, Leominster, Acton, Groton, Boxborough, Concord, Carlisle, and Harvard all have either no difference or very similar tax rates between residential and commercial. Now, I'm just going to move on before I get back to this, but I also want to look at the vacancy rates, because if you can look, we don't have one for Littleton per se, but if you look at the Northwest Route 2, that's as close as you can get to Littleton. Look at the second quarter of 2015 is 2.5%, and when you compare that to Boston and other places, that's very high. And just to kind of give a little visual, you can see that we have many businesses on screen right here who were contributing to the community in many ways. I know Littletown Toys was in the newspaper because they had a large donation to the Rubenhor Library. All of these businesses that went out of business, that didn't stay in Littleton, were contributing actively to our community. And I can guarantee you that the majority of those businesses on screen right now that are no longer with us would likely be members of the Littleton Business Association today if they were able to stay in town. Now, I don't know why they left town, but I know that they're walking around town. There are lots of vacancies. There are lots of for rent signs. These are just a few. I believe James may have snapshotted some of these today. You can see a shadow on one of those. But yeah, so what is it that we're here to ask for tonight? Basically, we have a wish list. Littleton places higher tax burden on commercial property owners, and we're simply asking that the town give a little bit of a tax relief to the commercial property owners by reducing that proportion between commercial and residential property taxes. We are hoping to end up somewhere between split and single. Of course, single would be great, but I understand that's not going to happen overnight. As many people mentioned, that hopefully it can happen if it happens in increments gradually over years. But we are asking for a gradual reduction in our tax burden, moving towards a more equitable tax distribution over time into the future. And we hope that you will consider that. And I could go on, but I don't want to take up too much time. That's pretty much all I have to say, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Please stand up, state who you are and where you live. Mr. Bassett, and then I'll come right back to you.
I own 14 Gilson Road. And I'd like to say that, we're really, when you own a business property in town and you don't live in town, you basically are being taxed without any we can't represent it. This is our representation. We don't get to vote. So that's why we're here to appeal this. The one thing that kind of hits me is that you say, 11% is basically 11.68% of where it's kind of stayed. But that's of the total tax, and to me, it sounds like a small number, but like this man said, that's 11% of the total tax, where we're only 21% of the tax base. So 1% of that 11% is quadruple. So to me, it's a no-brainer to start the move toward closing the gap on the distribution of the basis. That's it.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
My name is Mike Dubig. We own property at 20 Taylor Street, and we've been in business since 2003, and we've seen our taxes go up by 63% during that period of time. And just to put this discussion in a little more context, Littleton has the 35th highest commercial tax rate in the state. So if you're really serious about attracting business and not losing businesses, you really need to start moving to a single rate. It would be a significantly greater equity and would be an attraction to business to come into town.
Thank you. Well, we got someone out back there. Oh, Sherry, go ahead. Just tell us who you are.
Sherry Gould. I have business and residential properties in Littleton, so whichever way you go, it's going to hit me both ways. But I just noticed tonight in your own handout that there's something about Chapter 59, Section 51, and trying to adopt a small commercial exemption for businesses that have less than 10 employees. And it appears that this board hasn't looked at that exemption seriously since 2004. And I'd like you to consider looking at that exemption while you're looking at shifting less to businesses this year. I think everything everyone said is great. I think we as an organization realize you're not going to do it all at once, but it would be nice to see the trend shifting, and maybe that's a good place that this board could start tipping your hat a little bit to the small businesses that need some help right now. I don't think that's a big percentage of your tax at all.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
Brad Mitchell, 1 Wilderness Road. I'm also Deputy Executive Director of Mass Farm Bureau. We own the Agway building, the livestock auction behind it, as well as several commercial properties along 119. I'd support an incremental decrease in this, but I think we need to be careful because we've got a lot of retail operations. I see my barber here, and I see the kitchen rehab place that my wife is always looking at. Now, you can raise the rates enough, she's not going to cut my hair, but you raise them too much, it's going to be a while before we go visiting the kitchen rehab. So I think we need to get that right balance between not taking disposable income away from the residents, because that is going to impact on how often people go to the pub, how often they rehab their kitchens, how often they spend money. So I think I could see an incremental change in this and monitor what those things are over time. I'd also support Sherry. I'm more worried about the small businesses in town than I am the larger business. Unfortunately, the larger business are the ones that get the tax break.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Michael Zeldin, Low End Street. I'm just trying to seek a little bit clarity on defining the problem or the issue. There's history that was mentioned on how many years we've seen Littleton not able to, shall we say, enhance its economic development program or broaden the base. And sometimes the market speaks very loudly. I like to suggest that Littleton lacks the one thing we need for an economy. We don't have an economy here. And the reason for this is We have a very well-versed, well-trained, professional labor force, but very few of them work or need jobs in Littleton. Most of the workforce in Littleton goes elsewhere. We're almost like an island. So when we wish to attack the issue of economic development, let's have an economy, or think about developing an economy first. And that means when you attract businesses, you need also the other component, who's going to work there. And in this particular century, who works in the businesses makes the business. So I'm suggesting that when we think about this, there's a gap, and I believe Megan's presentation had at the very top, jobs. That topic of how Littleton can create jobs that actually are in here is not an easy one to address. I do not have a solution, because people get in their cars, they get in their train. I'm not suggesting this is wrong. I'm suggesting that outside of taxes, the tax rate, however you set it, will have little or no impact on the pure fact that if you want to grow business in Littleton, you have to have a labor force to do it. And I don't have a solution for that. But without that, there is no economy and therefore no economic development.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? All right, I'd like to entertain a motion to close the hearing, and we can have a continue our deliberation before we make a vote.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now down to business. Again, I'll start it up. Mr. Knox, you want to get into any discussion of the current rate, or anybody on the board jump in?
Anyone jump in? I have some questions for the board. What's our current residential rate, residential proportion for last year?
The percentage, Joe?
Percentage and what the, I'm shying from saying rate, but what was it for rent? Was it 18 something per 1,000?
Okay, so
1810?
1810 is the current rate,
29.89
is the commercial rate. So last year, the resident percentage was 70.36% of the entire. So if you remember back to the pie chart,
Yep.
how the 79 turned into 69, the actual percentage was 70 last year. Started off at 79.6.
Joe, you doing math?
Yeah, I don't know.
Why don't I talk while you're doing math?
Yeah, please.
Okay.
Yep.
I just want to make a couple of comments. Megan, great presentation. Thank you for doing it. Thank you all for all your input. And again, I had a tough time wrapping my head around it. And Mike, I think, from Taylor Street, you mentioned for the 35th highest rate in the state. I would just caution, that's bad optics, right? If we're 35th worst in the, or highest in the state. But there's a couple of pieces of the puzzle here. The valuation's huge. So if you took a business that you have in Littleton today and you moved it over to Westwood, which is 20-cent differential, 16.24 versus 16.44, the numbers that I did would have you paying 26% more in Westford with the same business because of the valuation at that rate, at the 16.24. So we can't look at things in a vacuum. You know, we have to look at the big picture. And I'm not saying, I don't want any of you to leave. You know, so I think we have to look at the whole picture. I said it from the get-go, and Megan, you said it's to the average person. I'm probably a little bit below average because it took me a lot longer than it took you with 2 presentations to get this. So I'm still wrapping my brain around this, but one of the things I would caution everybody on is the rates look bad. And Gary, we've had a couple of conversations at your station, and you know, we just said the numbers, 1810 and 2989. It looks bad. It's bad optics. But when you look at the whole valuation for doing business in Littleton, there's a lot of things that we want to fix. And we want to keep business in Littleton. We want to make it easier for you to do business in Littleton. We want to bring other businesses to Littleton. We don't, if there's opportunity, Sherry, to provide relief to some small businesses, we can seek those out. And that's something that I think, I saw a lot of pens moving up here when you were bringing that up. So I just want to put that caution out there. I'm not calling you out, Dave or Megan, but $29 rate in Boston with Boston valuation is going to be a lot more than what you're going to pay in Littleton. So we just have to be careful to just use the rate. The rate is part of the equation for sure, but I just want to, I think I reiterated it enough.
Joe, you have any other comment down there, or?
Not right now, still.
Okay. So, Melissa, any comment?
Sure. I can give you a general sense of where I'm at. And I'm sure you guys remember our deliberations from last year and how those went. So last year I went in here with a really definitive point of view, and that was I did not want to change the taxes either way. And we had a really long discussion. I don't know if you guys remember last year, but it was a long discussion. And over the course of, I think, an hour or so, PJ and Joe made some really good cases for the businesses in town. And I came out of that discussion, and as you know, how we voted last year, we moved in favor of the businesses and shifted that way. And it became apparent to me that we had some sort of an issue here that it was not a short-term one. I like this slide, the one with the CIP factor and how it's kind of dangerously close to the 1.5 line. And it became apparent to me we need to go the other direction. So again, last year we moved in I think, to use PJ's term, to close the gap and moved in that direction. So, and that was without frankly, any direct input or any common voice of the businesses. That was just as a board, us deliberating and trying to understand the big picture. Now this year we have a new factor at play, which I think is wonderful. The businesses have gotten together, found their voice, have given us input on what they'd like to see, their challenges, and I think this is another step along a journey that we need to take together, because I think part of the success around this is making sure everyone understands what's going on and where we're headed. And I liked what Selectman Dakota said about strategy, and also what Selectman Carr said about policy and bringing it a part of our budgeting discussions. We need to make this more of a well-understood, well-known problem with a goal and a direction that we're all in agreement to between businesses and the residents. So from my perspective, again, really great to see the businesses. I'm fully supportive of them. We need to move in this direction and towards closing the gap. Me personally, we took a step on that journey last year. I'd like to see us take a break and stay the same this year. Next year, move again towards closing that gap and helping out the businesses. That's where we need to go. I think we're all saying a lot of the same things. There's no doubt in my mind that we need to do that, and that's the goal that we need to head in. But I'd say we need to do more discussion about that goal, and we need to make sure the public understands what's going on and what the business's voice is, and then we can all go, yeah, right, let's make the pie bigger, like PJ was saying, make the foundation bigger. Awesome, fully there with you.
Okay. Any other comments?
Yeah, I'd offer the best way not to get any places to stop moving. And if we think we want to go in this direction, we continue moving in this direction. Otherwise, we stall, and then next year we sort of have a similar type conversation. Well, maybe, but I don't want to predict what will happen next year. I just want to say what this year and why I feel so strongly about this. First off, I think the split as it exists today is just plain wrong. It should never have gotten this far. Past boards had to make their decisions based on the information at hand, so it's not a critique of the board's decision, but the reality that we are faced with today, I say, is wrong. And we have an opportunity to begin correcting that. We started last year. We talked about, okay, let's start a strategy, let's have policy and stuff. Certainly all that's good. None of the policy we're going to start developing next week is going to help us this evening, nor is a strategy, other than the conversation we're having at this point. That indeed, we all do seem to lean somewhat towards the same way. It's going to be a matter of degree. And that matter of degree, for my money, pun intended, if you don't mind, is that we have to move towards closing that gap and continue the process. And it is small dollars. Now, every dollar out of somebody's pocket is a dollar, get that. We are working to control the increase in taxes. We say we want to make it part of the budget process, realizing a budget is how much money do we want to spend? And then we already know we're going to collect that much money. Okay, so to say this needs to be part of the budget process, it's just where is the burden going to fall is what this evening is about. It's not about the budget. The budget, we know where our levy is. We've decided we're going to spend to the levy. There's a collective decision, the board and the town folks, and when they voted at the town meeting, we're going to go to the entire levy. So that the budget became out of that. Now, we want to say who's going to shoulder the burden, at what rate, what percentages, is a better way to say that. And that's what tonight is about, is who shoulders the burden of what we've already decided to spend. Okay? So I hesitate to say, well, it needs to be part of the budget process. Well, when we're doing budget process, certainly that this is a reality, that we are going to burden somebody in the conversations. But I dare say we will not spend less next year when we go through the budget when we have tax classification talk, if you will, during the budget process. I just don't see that happen, folks. So to punt in that direction, I don't think helps us. And because I feel so strongly that it's the right thing for the town, it's not that I'm here for the business on that. It's that what's good for, I almost said something like what's good for GM is good for America, but that's not what I want to say here. What I want to stress is that folks in the room, some are residents, some are not. So Sherry eloquently said she's going to get either way, so whichever way the burden falls. But still, as a homeowner, she makes a decision to live in a particular piece of property and understands there's going to be burden associated with that property, as do we all. As a commercial business, to be able to make the bottom line, and as Megan pointed out, wages, rents, et cetera, all components of how they establish that bottom line eventually has to be taken into account. If we stall this evening on a step that I think we seem to agree, at least Melissa, kind of going after your argument here at the moment, that you agreed that last year was a good step in the right direction.
Indeed it was.
I think that we continue that is in that right direction. So that's what I'd ask that we consider this evening.
Go ahead, Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to make a point to something that Melissa said, she made a point to say that we should do basically what we did last year. And if you remember at the bottom of one of those slides, after we split the tax rate, there was 3 numbers down there. There was the split, the residential factor, and the CIP factor. All 3 of those numbers in that example come to the same split tax rate. Those different things, if you look at the factor sheet that's up on the screen now, those things we did last year all produce different results this year because both sides of the equation changed. Property values changed and the levy changed. So the factor that you voted last year, number 7, right, that .883129 that you voted last year, produced a different number than the last commercial factor that resulted, that 1.45 from last year. That's number 9 now. And if it go up a little, the last residential levy percentage that Joe was getting to, that's 70%, that produces another result this year. So what you did last year produces different results this year and how you want to change the pie.
Because the factors have changed.
I just threw some crap at you there.
Nice. Crystal clear.
Crystal clear.
That's his job.
So I guess, again, I respectfully disagree with PJ in regards to dealing with the budget. The town has to know if we're going to burden more of the taxes onto the residents, that's going to have an impact on everybody in this town. And I understand the small business. I support small business. I have no problem with the small business in town. I think that, we need to make this town multifaceted in regards to small business, to include the permitting piece that you mentioned earlier, help out with some infrastructures for the common. A lot of those pictures that Megan put up was all downtown. And, we know that there's issues downtown, and we know that that has to be addressed. And as Steve so eloquently put, that the .88 has, actually, the CIP drops from 145 down to 143. So, we're getting closer to, we're lowering, essentially, keeping it the same, we're lowering the actual 150, getting it closer to a 140. And we're decreasing it down. So, again, that's my opinion, is to keep it. We've been at 173, we've been at 1171 has been an average. We're looking at 1168, and that split going down from 145 down to 143. And that would be my recommendation.
What are we
For
right
number
now?
7.
He's looking at, Jimmy's looking
I
at
know
number
what the
7.
executive is looking at, I was asking Steve a question.
145.
We're at 145 right now?
Yes.
So,
So where are you leaning on this?
number 7.
Can everybody see number 7?
We did last year.
Yeah. So number 7,
I'm sorry?
That's what we did last year, right?
It's the same percentage.
Same.
so the percentage would be .883129. CIP would be 1.4344. The number that I told you to be aware of, I'm going to tell you what it is anyway. Residential would be 1757, and commercial would go, the CIP would be 2854. That's number 7.
But I'd like you to look at the dollar change, so we can get it out of all the math piece, if you will.
Yep.
And just look at the simple dollars out of pocket.
Okay.
And it increases it. Now, we're going to increase everybody's, we got that, but you see you increase the range there.
Yep.
And I think our conversation was leaning to decreasing the range.
We are decreasing the CIP.
Okay, but as we talked about, let's not get too enamored with those ratios, if you will, too enamored with the rates. What's the actual cost?
Out of pocket.
And
227 for residential, 402 for business.
okay, so you are advocating increasing business disproportionate to the residents.
I'm advocating for decreasing the CIP and keeping the factor at .88. That's what I'm advocating for.
But let's talk about the result, though.
It's up on the board, everybody can see it. If that's what it is, that's what it is.
I know, but Jimmy, at least acknowledge the 402 and the 227 rather than just say it's on the board.
I've just said it was 227, 402, PJ. What more do you want me to say?
Just a point on option number 7, that if you look at the column of percentage change, that is the tax bill from last year to this year, if you adopt number 7, as there's been some expression of support for doing, the percentage change for a residential bill would be 3.38. Percentage change for a commercial bill will be less than that, 2.47%.
So percentage-wise, residents increase more.
Correct.
Our number's
All right,
fine.
but to Don's earlier point as to what those percentages mean as the 4-to-1 ratio.
Listen, we can talk about percentages, we can talk about what the numbers mean all night. It is what it is, so to speak, and I think that we've heard from the business community. We understand what their concerns are. I've also heard from a lot of taxpayers in town and try and understand what they are. And I try and understand what Health and Human Services report came out, and folks in town want to live in place and want to try to afford to stay in town, and kids that grew up in this town can't afford this town.
Why can't they afford it, Jim? That's become one of those common strawman phrases, nobody can afford to stay in Littleton. May I offer this, please?
It's very expensive to live in Littleton, period. That's why they can't afford it.
The average tax bill...
The rates are very expensive. The values are very expensive, and that's what it is.
In the town of Littleton, average residential tax bill, the average residential tax bill is the second lowest of all the surrounding towns. Air, Acton, Boxborough, Groton, Westford. I've listed one out. Only Air is lower as a dollar value. I hesitate to say Littleton's expensive. Of course it costs money to live in Littleton, but Littleton is not the most expensive town in the local area. It's a lesser expensive town. Our housing costs, the median house cost, Joe, if I'm speaking out of turn here, or out of school, slap me here. But our housing costs are lower. Am I not correct in that? In median home prices, then compared to a lot of the surrounding towns, our median home prices are lower.
Not necessarily.
Well, not necessarily, I'm saying not air, thank you. But when we start looking at, what is it, Acton, Foxborough, Westford?
Well, then, yes.
Yes.
People that lived in Littleton and want to grew up here and want to try and stay here, that's what I hear, period.
I know I've heard people say that because the taxes are so high in the town of Littleton, they have to move. Yet nobody that I'm aware of is actually personally face-to-face been able to say, I am leaving, and here are the numbers, and this is why I've left the town of Littleton. I hear downsizing.
Tell me the last business that said, I'm leaving Littleton because the taxes are too high.
And that's a fair enough question. That actually, it's a very accurate question, as a matter of fact, because some of the businesses that went up there are not because of taxes.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. So we're talking about certainly a split right now that's onerous. And it was easy, we show it going like this. The thing is, it was a slide. It was easy to slide down that ramp because it was so greasy and so slippery to slide down and increase the gap. And then showed more of the burden upon commercial properties than the residential properties. And to reverse that trend is extraordinarily difficult, as we're discovering this evening.
Okay.
And that's why I think it becomes a really point about Chuck's point about policy and a target and a goal. Every new board shouldn't be faced with this situation. At least this year, we get some input, from the businesses. I think that's a great step forward, but it's like, even to Chuck's point, right? You get hit with this, you have to learn the concepts, figure out why did it even start this way? Why do we even have a split? That was my first question. How did this even come about? It comes a long time ago, right? To your point, it's been a slippery slope. It's been a long journey. Let's figure out a way to stop the bleeding and get us headed in the right direction when we all agree what that direction is.
So, Jim proposed number 7. What would your proposition be?
You asking me?
Yes.
3.
That'd be great.
Yeah, gotcha. And now it's changed to residential. It's not different.
Now, we can take a rate off any of the...
We can jump anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. These are just examples for us to work with.
Yeah, there's so many possible permutations, for sure, but at the very least, as to where I'm thinking in the aggregate, 3 is about the right place. It's a little less, a little more.
Keith, is there any way to
We're on the
zoom that?
margin with that.
That's as zoomed as we can zoom?
Yeah.
You got them? Okay, good, thank you.
All right, any other proposals here?
Yeah, I'm looking around the 1.4, which is almost the exact same as, but I'm not taking any examples off the chart and going,
Okay.
Well, 6 is pretty close to that, Joe. 6 is pretty close, that's 1.41. And I'm sorry, that's 5. That's my eyes, sorry.
4 is actually closer.
4 is actually closer than that, yeah. So you're somewhere around 4 and 5, Joe?
yes. I mean,
Again, I think that with 7, we're in the right direction. We're pushing the CIP down. And let's get this part of discussion earlier in the year, so, we're not sitting here one day a year to figure this out.
Yeah.
I'm not opposed to going down, it's just not now. We need more discussion about it.
Well, we're here tonight, though.
I know,
Well.
I'm letting you talk, DJ.
Joe, you thinking you want to go 114? Just use the shorthand that's on the factor option table, which is page 6.
page 6, the number I have is what? 141, yes.
141, so that's factor 5.
Is it factor for that?
Yeah.
Okay, I was thinking 141, 145.
To be fair, let's
move in the direction again.
Let's say that, we're increasing the residential 4.15% and increasing the CIP by 0.97.
That's correct.
So, that's the change. An increase for the residential by 4.15. That's too much, I believe that's way too much. And again, the residents in town pay between 70 and 80% of the tax burden, period.
True.
So, that being said, folks in town are paying, and small businesses in town are paying. I understand that. We're all paying. And this is it's the worst part of this job. So I'd look for any motions. If there are any motions out there,
Craig, I certainly am interested in a motion, and working along with Joe's thoughts there, I'd like us to look at 5 a little more closely, and I'd certainly be willing to offer a motion on that.
again, my opinion is it's too much of a shift.
Are you ready for a motion, Will?
You want to make a motion, make the motion.
All right, thank you. Move the Board of Selectmen vote pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 56, as follows relative to the fiscal year 2016 property tax, and I suspect we're just going to take them one at a time on the motions.
Yes.
To a residential factor of, I want to figure this right. Okay, so for number 5, 0.889695.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No. Motion passes. Thank you. Number 7, moving on to the public hearing for Gold. Again, this is going to be,
Finish these.
oh, yeah, we have 2 more motions. Go ahead.
Do we want to have any discussion on these 3? Or just make the motion?
No, they're pretty standard.
Okay. All right, move the Board of Selectmen vote.
Hey, folks, we have a meeting continuing here, please. You want to talk, take it outside. Thank you.
Move the Board of Selectmen vote pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 56, as follows relative to the FY 2016 property tax, not to adopt a residential exemption.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye. Move the Board of Selectmen vote pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 56, as follows relative to the FY 2016 property tax, not to adopt a small business exemption.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye. Move the Board of Selectmen vote pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 56, as follows relative to the FY 2016 property tax. To identify $0 in unused property tax levy capacity. Did I say that right?
No. The amount to be filled in is 28,028,047 and 77 cents. $28,047.77.
Right, as Keith said.
Yes. That's the number to plug in for the residential factor that you voted.
It's been moved.
And we will need signatures.
Wait a second.
Do I hear a second? All those in favor? Aye.
And you all 5 need to sign.
As we've gone through the FY17 budget
Yep.
and looking into the future, is that we take a look at perhaps not using the entire levy. Not something to be decided tonight for sure, but I'd like to introduce it. So we're in the budget process now for FY17. And part of my rationale behind that is earlier this evening, our chief assessor told us about the change in the personal property and how we've done a better job in being able to assess what's actually out there. And it all depends on your perspective, so whether it's a better job or not, because it's increased new growth substantially. And that's an area, and it doesn't need to be from there, and I'm not offering any particular amount at this point, but at least it enters the conversation that we look at not using the entire levy for FY17.
Point well made. Should have thought of this earlier.
Once again, we should have taken this whole process into the budget process, and maybe we could have made those decisions.
Yes. it would've been-
Other than, shifting more of the tax burden onto the residents.
So look at an upside.
That
from
being said,
The lesson we
I
learned from
agree
last
with you.
year is we worked much more closely with the assessors this year than we had previously. So we're much better informed going through this process than previous years had been.
Okay.
So, not to diminish your point, because it's an excellent point, but I would like the folks in town to take some credit for that. We're moving towards that increased cooperation amongst the various agencies, so.
Okay. All right, public hearing for Assurance Gold LLC. I should have brought this up because we didn't open it.
We're opening and continuing until the 25th of January.
So let's open up the hearing. Mr. Ravella, could you read the notice, please?
Yes, sir. Board of Selectmen public hearing, valuable secondhand items license, Keith Shaughnessy, manager, Assurance Gold LLC, doing business as Countryside Trading at 550 Newtown Road and 287 Great Road, Littleton, Mass. Board of Selectmen will conduct a public hearing Monday, December 7, 2015, at 8:15 p.m., Meeting Room 103, Town Offices, 37 Shattuck Street, Littleton, on the request of Keith Shaughnessy, manager, Assurance Gold LLC, doing business as Countryside Trading, located at 550 Newtown Road and 287 Great Road, Littleton, for valuable secondhand items dealers license pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 140, Section 54, and Chapter 160 of the Littleton Town Code. 37 Shattuck, comments therein may be submitted in writing to the Selectmen Town Administrator's Office, 37 Shattuck Street, Littleton, Mass. by noon on Friday, December 4, 2015, or in person at the hearing. All persons interested are invited to attend. James Carr, Chairman, Board of Selectmen.
Thank you, Mr. Ravella. I'll entertain a motion to continue this till January 25th.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, 8A, investment policy. These are the adoption of the amendments that we saw at our last meeting. Any changes, Steve?
No.
Okay. Board members, questions?
No.
Look for a motion.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to adopt proposed amendments to the investment policy as recommended by the Financial Policies Working Group and introduced on November 16th, 2015.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, 8B, staffing vacancy review policy. This is to adopt the amendments that was presented to us at our last meeting. Budget neutral, no FTE increase for the staffing vacancy review policy. Questions,
And the
concerns?
additional language that the board had requested is shown on page 2 of the document. It's in blue, to add language that the Board of Selectmen will review this policy on an annual basis at the time budget guidelines are adopted for the ensuing fiscal year, and at such other times as changes to the town's fiscal circumstances may require, for which the Bonnie's position would prepare appropriate recommendations. You would want it a relief valve.
Right.
Yep.
So that if the circumstances change around us, that we would revisit this policy.
Any questions? Look for a motion.
Thank you, Keith.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to adopt amendments to the staffing vacancy review policy prepared by the Assistant Town Administrator for Finance and Budget as introduced on November 16th, 2015, as revised.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, 9A, we have annual license renewals for alcoholic beverages, Mass General Law, Chapter 138. Deputy Patterson.
Mr. Chair, members, in review of the license renewals, I went through them all. Everybody's information is up to date and current. You currently have 11 various licenses out there with 4 all alcohol, being Chip Shots, Pub on the Common, Yangtze River. Lezkaya was approved by the ABCC, but still isn't built, but so that's an approved license that you have out there now. 2 all alcohol package store off premises, Fallon's and Littleton Road Liquors. You have 4 wine and malt beverage off premises, which would be Archer's Mobile, Common Convenience, Donlands Supermarket, and Tedeschi's. And then you have the 1 all alcohol club license for the VFW Post. I have that you had 2 pending, but now with your approval of the Courtyard Marriott, you'll have 3 pending with the ABCC. So that changed as of tonight. Past year, found everything to be, they've been great in working with the alcohol agents, any type of incidents. The one incident that comes to mind happened with the ABCC and Tedeschi's. They did an underage sting, and unfortunately, they got caught and did serve suspension for their license. But other than that, they've all been great.
Have your alcohol, what do you call them?
The agents,
The agents, have they been out?
they've been out in communicating with them and also observing, like, we get the information from the state on a quarterly basis as to any OUIs and stuff like that that have taken place.
Have you done any stings?
They have not done a sting as of yet.
Okay. Sorry about that, folks. Any questions for?
Nope.
No. No? Good. All right, Deputy, thank you. That being said, I'd look for a motion.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to approve the annual renewal of licenses for alcoholic beverages for calendar year 2016 for the list of said licenses is printed in the meeting notice addendum to be made a part hereof.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? No one's opposed. How about that? All right. Selectmen's meeting schedule. Set regular meeting schedule through May of 2016. I'll be on vacation next week, so I'm not going to be here for Monday or Wednesday, I believe.
For next week?
Is it next week? Yeah. We have a meeting Monday?
Tuesday.
Monday and Tuesday.
Monday and
Yeah, we're
Tuesday,
meeting
right?
with the, we have a joint budget meeting with the FinCom and School Committee next Tuesday night.
Right. And Monday is a regular meeting?
Monday is a regular meeting.
Yeah, so,
Which we can keep light.
yeah.
I mean, the one thing that you had put on was the update from the library trustees on their building project. And we'll have other business, we'll have the rest of the annual licenses for, other than alcoholic beverages,
Okay.
and a few other items.
Problem with the schedule, anybody?
No.
This one here?
Yeah.
No, I have a question about Thursday night, but we can,
Okay. Seeing none, I'd look for a motion.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to schedule the following Board of Selectmen's regular meetings for the dates indicated at 6:30 PM in Room 103, Shattuck Street Building, January 11th and 25th, 2016, February 8th and 22nd, 2016, March 7th and 21st, 2016, April 11th and 25th, 2016, and May 9th, 23rd, 2016.
Second.
So moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Looks like we're set till May.
question on Thursday night with the planning board.
Yep.
How many of us will be attending? Do we have to post?
Yeah, I'll have to post.
Post it just
Yeah,
to
I'll
be sure.
post it, yeah.
I have a medical procedure on Friday. I don't know if I'll be there on Thursday, but I'll try and make it.
And you're going to be meeting with the chairman of the planning board?
I am, and I'll make sure that gets disseminated through Keith to you all.
One of the things I want to point out, can I point out this now, or do they have to? On that walk that we went, Melissa and I, we did talk about the possibility, and he mentioned he might think about having that on the far right-hand side along the lot line, some kind of a path that would go through there. I watched him tonight, and I wasn't sure whether he was going to mention that or not, but when you meet with the chairman of the planning board,
Vice Chair will be with me.
Okay, all right.
Hopefully.
Yep,
Should be with
we'll do that. When is it?
We haven't figured that out.
Okay,
Just called this
perfect.
morning.
I'll be there.
I'll
Would
let
that
you
be
know.
something to include the HCA?
No.
That
Oh,
pathway?
yes. That's what we're talking about, Jeff. Look for a motion? Yeah.
Motion adjourned?
Second.
Moving to second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you.
Thank you.
Flip those switch.